It is day 39 of my fruit fast. In the past 2 days, I've essentially been confronting my entire life. My entire past, my entire present, and the entire potentiality of my future, which is in my hands, in my will, and in my will's ability and responsibility to choose. It feels like I'm at this key moment in my life of absolute surrender, simultaneous to the divine, as well as to the depths of my fears, which stand in the way of my full and absolute connection to the divine, Yesterday, I was unable to avoid my mind wanting to tell the story of the narrative of my entire life, of how I got here, of my mythological rising into this moment. And so much of that feels far too vulnerable to share here in this tender moment of my life. So maybe someday. But for now, I'm going to touch on a few key moments that have appeared. And I'm going to go slow, because if I reach a moment where I'm like, do I want to talk about this? Or do I want to withhold it? I'm going to take my moment to decide. There are some key elements from college which have been coming up. The first being that sophomore year, when I switched my major from mechanical engineering to philosophy. In college, I read a text by Saint Augustine named City of God, about the city of God in heaven and the city of humanity on earth, and how perfection belongs to heaven and the city of humanity is filled with sin. And one of the very first philosophy essays that I wrote was about that text and Augustine's exegesis interpretation of Genesis, the Bible, and the fall of man. essentially trying to understand what evil is, why God, who is all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful, somehow allows for evil to exist. If he knew that we were going to choose to separate ourselves from him in the Garden of Eden, and he had the power to alter that choice, and he loves us unconditionally, then why did he allow it to happen? And why did he allow evil to come into the world? Augustine's answer, in short, is that evil exists because of free will. And in fact, evil does not actually exist. Evil is merely a privation of God's goodness. Evil is merely when we stray from the innate divine alignment of God. And why God allowed this was so that human beings can experience what it is like to be disconnected from God, to then more freely, more willfully, more volitionally choose with the fullness of our souls, with the fullness of our wills, with the fullness of our individual authority, to reconnect with God. Not merely to be gifted in the Garden of Eden this divine union and perfection with God, but to choose it with our wills in face of the temptations of evil and of wickedness and of sin. Free will is ultimately an opportunity to return to God. Now, I am not speaking dogmatically, and in fact, in the past couple days, I've been facing my own uncertainties with regard to dogma. And various universal questions which have been hijacked by our perpetually discoursing minds. Another important text that I read in college was called The Animal That Therefore I Am by Jacques Derrida. And this text is about the animality of humanity. What does our animality mean? What does it mean that we are in these bodies? And how has the question of animality been posed throughout the history of philosophy? What kind of narratives, scripts, programs have existed within our metaphysical discourse about who we are? Derrida's take is that This idea that the mind, rationality, logos, is the epitome of our perfection. Is what places us humans above all else, crowns us as the kings of this world, holding dominion over the animals. What Derrida says is that there is an implicit sacrificial war against our own animality and against animality itself, against animals themselves, against this question of the animal. We humans, we are the thinking animal. And then every other animal in the world, we just categorize in its infinite diversity, in its infinite multiplicity. All of those, they're animals. They just belong to that category. Sacrificial war to do with time, Saturn, technology, and the pathos. I don't want to get too deep into the mind realms here. In fact, I can feel in my body that I'm too up here, and I want to get to the point where I'm speaking about the thing that is more pertinent to right now. But this is my process, and we'll see if I edit this out. To put this extremely esoteric and complex book into a nutshell, the discourse that mind and rationality are the supreme ideals toward which humanity should strive has actually fueled a complete disavowal of our ability to feel and of the ability of pathos, empathy, compassion. Pathos belongs to these words etymologically. Pain, the interconnectedness of our suffering, which is shared in universal kinship between all animals. We all suffer. We all can experience pain. And what Derrida suggests is that in this supreme orientation towards the mind, we actually set the preconditions for something like factory farms to exist, where the mass slaughter of billions of animals, heartless, apathetic, filled with the flowing of blood, a system of blood sacrifice. Presents to us a mirror of that which we are doing to our own animality. Torture, slavery, imprisonment, slaughter. When we stay stuck up here in our minds, this is what we are doing to our animality, to our ancient animality, to the primordial, ageless bodies, which for thousands of years have been coming together in union and reunion to create and proliferate life. Which brings me to the next chapter. Where I confronted both of these programs, both of these essential narratives and stories, which I was drawn to in college. I faced them mystically in my life. I found myself in a situation where I confronted my own inner demons, as well as external demons, the dark forces, the serpent from the Garden of Eden, which tempted us to separate ourselves from God with our own free will, to witness heaven and hell, and to choose hell itself. And there was a deceiver in that moment. Whether within or without. And I was convinced that I had no other choice than to go into hell. And so I went. And as I'm in there, as I was in there, I realized there's something off here. This has something to do with that book about animality. This has something to do with the universal war against compassion. This has something to do with a system of blood sacrifice that is aimed at imprisoning, suppressing, controlling, genetically modifying our animality. The freedom that is contained within our bodies. The sacred intelligence of our universal kinship with all life. And so I fought my way out of there. Fought my way out of hell. And hell tried to tell me, no, you're staying here. And that put me in quite a state of fear. And the traumatic ripples of that event, whose details I will not share, and many events tied to it, perhaps I'll share in the future. I'm still integrating and healing to this day. Recognizing how so much of my life, over and over again, I've been choosing hell. Whether as a kid, developing an addiction to video games, whether as a teenager, drinking myself to death, whether in college, pursuing lust, and again, drinking myself to death in search of lust, in search of the love that is truly underneath of the desire for lust. Seeking love externally in ways extractive of the feminine essence. These were hells that I was putting myself through. All of these micro instantiations of hell in every choice point. Do you want to choose hell? Or are you ready to renounce hell and reclaim heaven? It seems to me that free will, in a realm of quantum fluctuations and possibilities and potentialities, ever ongoing in the ever becoming world, our free wills are our ability to choose which of these realities, which of these potentialities we will actualize. And when the temptations present themselves, and the serpent says, do you want to come taste hell again? Every opportunity is an opportunity to say no. Get behind me, Satan. Today I choose God. And to witness the ways in which we continuously stray from God and detach ourselves from God. And yet the opportunities present themselves for our wills to come in and say, no, I am done with this. I choose my innate reconnection with God. God, guide me to this reconnection. Which is where I get into another little chapter, which was right after this hell episode, where I felt there is something that wants to suppress my animality right now. And I was still very freshly navigating the ripples of that journey, as my dad came to visit me in San Diego, and we decided to go to the zoo and to SeaWorld, the San Diego Zoo and SeaWorld. 3 days we did this. At the zoo, I witnessed all of these exotic animals put on display, each of them in their own cage, for the sake of entertainment. I made eye contact with a gorilla at that zoo, and I'm just remembering this. Oh my God. I put a gorilla on my vision board this year. This is now coming up. I made eye contact with that gorilla. And it was one of the wisest beings that I've ever encountered. And he looked at me. And he knew exactly what the fuck's going on. And he knew the injustice. And he knew that these clowns who were coming to take pictures of him were just as captive as he was. Captive to the false captivations on the screen. Oh, look at this picture of this gorilla. Oh, look at this picture of this giraffe. Oh, look at me, I'm at the zoo. Captivity. Through false activities and distractions of the mind. Passivity and inaction. Entertainment. Imprisonment. Ment means mind. I digress. We go to the safari zoo. And there they're talking about how there's this last water buffalo of its particular kind, and it's endangered. And what they're doing, these glorious scientists, they are actually getting the genetic information, the DNA, extracting it from this being, and they're implanting it into another cow that can then create a progeny and keep this lineage alive to save this water buffalo that's about to go extinct. A miracle of science, where humanity upon its throne with dominion over animality says, I will save you. I will reclaim you from impending death. And I will reintroduce you to the wild with new genetic information. Whatever the fuck they were saying. Perhaps you hear in my voice, perhaps you feel the polemical defensiveness that I carry. There is a certain element of disgust in the genetic tampering, trying to call itself life, trying to call itself graceful, trying to call itself a savior. And perhaps this is just a pessimism that resembles Nietzsche and Dostoevsky and Schopenhauer and whoever else, the existentialists. But to me, having freshly read these texts, this text about animality, about the genetic manipulation of animality and all of these factory farms being a reflection of how the way we alter animals genetically are actually rippling back into our own selves. We're imposing these genetic alterations upon our own selves. And this is a war upon the primordial and wild, intact wildness, animality of our being, of our pathos, of our hearts. And then we get to SeaWorld. And I'm witnessing these killer whales, these orcas with their bent dorsal fins. And how humans have tamed these creatures, these massive, magnificent creatures, put them in these tiny little pools. What is this sadistic element of our minds which wants to take animality and confine it? Animality that is meant to be swimming in the vast oceans of the infinite womb, of the infinite universe, which knows no bounds, which knows not of finitudes, which knows not of imprisonment and of enslavement. What part of our minds, what part of our self-conniving fantasies see a magnificent creature like that and say, let's put it in a tiny little fucking box and traumatize it and impose our control and our will on it. And I made eye contact with a dolphin at this place. And this dolphin was coming to me like, "Can you help? Can you help? Can you help? Like, what's going on here? Why is this happening?" And this is an eye-to-eye telepathic communication of the pathos. Telepathic of empathy. Heart to heart, I could tell wordlessly that this dolphin was communicating to me. I could tell wordlessly that the gorilla was communicating to me. We speak this language. Pre-linguistic language being of the mind. When I was studying Derrida, I was also studying Noam Chomsky's Cartesian linguistics side by side, and I was like, what the fuck? And at SeaWorld, there's a roller coaster. And I went on that roller coaster like 4 times just because I had access to it. There was no line. And I'm on it philosophizing like, this is just like fleeting pleasure. This is short-term rewards. This is the same exact technology and method that the captivators in the zoo use to actually enslave the orca. They reward it with food and punishment, with control of emotions. When you go on the roller coaster, you like feel the intensity rising, and then you fall, and then you rise, and then you go through all of it, and it's like a synthesization of an emotional experience that is actually empty. And all the food that they're serving, it's like supposed to taste good, but the human beings that are at these zoos, they're being coddled like animals. There is a microcosmic to macrocosmic relationship in how human beings are interacting with animals, and then a certain force is interacting with the humans in this same exact way. The humans are imprisoning and siphoning the animals, and then there's this force, either within humanity or outside, that is doing this with humans. And that is the force that I witnessed when I confronted hell itself. And that is the force of the serpent of the Garden of Eden. It seems that there is a force that wishes to confine and imprison and suppress all of animality. And what does that include? That includes the indigenous consciousness of humanity present in living indigenous tribes, but also present within our ancestral memory. And within my body, I feel a connection to these vast ancestral undercurrents of being, to these deep, raw, spiritual teachings that I feel welling up deep inside me, and these feel woven and tied to my freedom. And they feel like they're in my heart, wanting to break free like a wild animal, like a gorilla in a cage, saying enough is enough. We are here to reclaim this world from a system of falsity, from a system of control, from a system that wishes to confine, control, imprison, constrict. And wow, it's getting a little dark, and I'm going to see if I'm just going to keep talking, and if I need to finish the video later, I will. All of these things are deeply interconnected, from Augustine and everything that talks about, to Derrida and everything that he talks about, to my experiences with animality and all that that's about, to this present moment now, day 39 of my fruit fast, where I feel myself reclaiming my freedom. And I feel myself confronting the deepest uncertainties and fear that stand in the way of that freedom. And the men's group that I am in right now, we do 2 months in each energy center. We went from the roots to the sacral, and now we are in the solar plexus. And the solar plexus is the place of our will. And it feels like I carry a massive wound there, which I am confronting and healing. And when I feel this passion within my heart, and when I speak of telepathic connection and connection with the kindred beings with whom we share life on earth, the whales in this ocean, the monkeys in this jungle, the wild animals of this earth which have not been tamed, which are still intact in their primordial animal essence, and the sacred intelligence that they carry within themselves. These are not beings which are subservient to this mind which wishes to control and disconnect from innate connection to love and to divinity and to God. And within this wound, within my solar plexus, I actually feel afraid to step into the fullness of this wildness, to fully express myself in the language that I contain within myself, in the voice that wants to come out and emerge like a volcanic eruption of Mother Earth herself. I feel all of these codes. I feel this desire and this will to reorient reality itself, and to clear away all of the darkness, all of the imprisonment, all of the falsity and the deceit. There was lightning over there, and to fucking strike it down with lightning. And I feel an ancestral connection to Zeus, to Thor, to my Nordic ancestry, to my roots. And it's like there's this knot inside of my solar plexus that says, you are not allowed. You will be punished. Stay stuck in fear. Stay stuck in programs. Stay stuck in hell. my mind. My mind, when it confronts this wound in the solar plexus and its absolute depths, it freezes. And it induces this like protective mechanism of paralysis, where I'm just like, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, I just won't do anything. So listen, if you've gotten this far, know that this is me touching upon a deep vulnerability, which in a lot of ways I'm afraid to share about because of all that it entails. It entails going to war against beings of falsity who claim themselves true and who have programmed a lot of humanity, as within so without, to believe that they are their one truth, the absolute truth. So I'm going to navigate this as gently and as wildly as I can, and as honestly and as authentically and raw as I can, as vulnerably as I can, without overexposing myself. And it's going to be a slow process, and perhaps it won't be. Perhaps there will be accelerations, and I'm just going to allow myself to step right into it. But it's really fucking difficult when my mind gets to that pinprick. And it seems I'm being offered a choice within myself to not only reclaim myself, but to guide others to reclaim themselves as well. And the fear is that somehow that desire which feels innate within me is wrong, is misguided, is deluded, and is deceived. And so I speak of that to get it out. And to witness how my passion still remains. So, that's where I'm at with that. And to be continued. Because I have a whole lifetime ahead of me. And we are entering the solar plexus. So I suspect I'm going to be doing some deep work in this area and with this wound and with my willpower here in the next 2 months. Thank you for hearing me out. Thank you for witnessing me. Thank you for holding me. I pray for liberation. As within, so without. May all beings be free. May all hearts be reconnected with God and absolute freedom. May the torture and the enslavement and the blood sacrifice and all of the pain and all of the war and all of the falsity and all of the deceit be absolutely eviscerated by the divine truth of God and God's universal love. Thank you. Thank you to the gorillas. Thank you to the owls. Thank you to the dolphins. Thank you to the whales. Thank you to the monkeys. Thank you to the oxen. Thank you to the water buffaloes. Thank you to the lions. Thank you to the angels. Thank you to God. Thank you to every animal on earth that is holding freedom within their heart and breathing that freedom into being. Thank you. Oh.